statistic on...
You're taking 244, right?
No, just this. Just 243.
You're taking 244, right?
Possibly.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. We'll deal with that 244. It's checking their colors to make sure their colors match what they said they're supposed to be.
And you do that year after year?
I do it 3 times a year. Yeah, they let me.
I kind of started reading.
You started reading through that.
And once it's on your yearly inquiry.
My yearly. Try yearly. Try yearly. They keep missing the fact that I do it 3 times a year. That's okay. We'll let them go. I think they probably drink a lot of wine because of me over at Mars. Anyway, I want to get back into less frivolous kind of studies. I mean, the grapes were great. The grapeful things were great. I think it's awesome. But here's some less frivolous stuff. This was pulled back from 2011. U.S. oil drilling gains favor with Americans. So this was talking about offshore drilling in particular and oil exploration in Alaska. In particular, we're talking about oil exploration up there, coastal Alaska. So now they were talking about Alaska there, but the question here, or the statement here, is a little bit different. 6 in 10 Americans favor increasing offshore drilling for oil and gas in U.S. coastal areas. So that changes it a little bit. That's not just Alaska anymore, right? That becomes the Gulf of Mexico. That becomes the entire eastern seaboard. That becomes the entire western seaboard. So regardless, the claim that I have isn't so much about the coastality of the claim. It's about the 6 in 10 Americans bit. So go ahead and read the rest of this for a second. Take all that in momentarily. Take all that in. Hopefully you can read it. That. See if I can make it any bigger. I can do, hang on, let me do this. Make it, oh, here we go. We'll do it bit by bit here. Is that more legible?
Yes.
A little bit better, and then we'll scroll down and get the other one. So here's the first question in the survey. So their claim is that's up from 50%. So I guess in May 2010, that was at 50%, not 60%. So that's one question. Next question. Do you think the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge in Alaska should or should not be opened up for oil exploration? They didn't tell us what this was in May of 2010. They just said it. They did make a claim about this, though. I want to come back to that claim in a second. 49% say yes, it should. 45% say no, it should not. This is much closer than that up there, yes? So someone's like, yeah, go ahead, drill all you want, except you might want to watch it more. So my question really, I'm going to scroll this back down smaller a little bit. This is what I want to focus on, is this claim right here. Support for offshore drilling and oil exploration in Alaska reach new highs. There are 2 claims there. 2 things are reaching new highs, yes? Number 1 is support for offshore drilling, and number 2 is oil exploration in Alaska. And these, I went through the entire survey. These are the only 2 questions that apply to those 2 statements, so therefore I must assume this is what they're pulling their data from. This is what they're pulling. Make sense? Fair? So the question I have is this. Do you believe that 60% is statistically significantly higher than the 50% it was in May? Aaron says, no! No. 10 percentage points is not enough. Try to turn one set's light back on. Are you guys okay in the
Well,
dark?
they say like reach new highs.
So 60, in your opinion, can I do, is that okay if I do that? Or is it better like that? Like this?
And the other ones could be
Off. Okay, I was waiting for a response. Thank you. Aaron, go ahead. Forget this one for a second. Just focus on this one right now. So you're saying 60 is not bigger than 50?
Well, it's bigger.
No, it's bigger, but it's not meaningfully bigger. Thank you, sister. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
60 is not meaningfully bigger than 50. Anybody different? Zach
Yep.
says no, it is.
Like if you had an 80% grade, if you got 10% more, you'd be happier with that.
Okay, so comparing it to like your own personal experience, if you had an 80% and you wanted a 90, that's a big difference. Some of my students would actually say even less would be significant. If they were at 89, wanted 90. 1% would be significant. So good, 10% definitely is. I like that. I like that. Other votes. Sean, go ahead.
It's significantly greater.
It is significantly greater. You're saying it is.
Well, yeah, because you've actually convinced 10 more of those 40% to change their ideas.
Okay, so you're looking
If you
back.
look at 25% of people you didn't convince.
Okay, nicely done, sir. Nicely done back there. So that's a vote for it is. Janelle, go ahead.
I was just going to say, wouldn't it depend on the random one sample, how many people?
Yes. Well, not necessarily. Yes, how many? But there's something that's a function of how many that it definitely depends on. Let's come back to that momentarily. Kelly?
I think the same. It depends how many that could still be a lower number depending on the total number.
Here is what you guys are asking for. Crap. Right here.
Oh.
This is the results section. I'll read it to you. Results are based on telephone interviews conducted March 3 to 6, 2011 with a random sample of 1,021 adults, which FYI is plenty. We'll learn why in Matthew 44. If you want to know right now, I'll say after class. It's plenty. It's more than enough for aged 18 plus, now watch this, living in the continental U.S., selected using random digit dial sampling. I find that interesting. Only continental U.S. people, not Hawaii, which is all coastal, and not Alaska, which a big chunk of this is about.
So
I find that
Alaska.
interesting. Maybe that was the point of the survey, I'm not sure. But here's the important stuff. For results based on the total sample of national adults, one can say with 95% confidence the margin of error is 4 percentage points plus or minus. That's the number that you have to look for in these polls. That's the number that you have to look for in these polls. Because if you ask another 1,021 adults the same question, are you going to get exactly those results again? No. Are you going to get close to those results again? Probably, yeah, probably, yes. So what you have to do is you have to apply this wiggle room, this plus or minus to that 60%, and say that 60% might be as low as what? 56%, or maybe as high as 64. And every time you do a study like this, you have to put those error bars on that. So using that, statistically significantly, it is higher than 50. Because if you apply that same 4% to 50, 50 can be as high as 54, correct? But 54 is still lower than the lowest this is with the 4% taken off. It's at least 2 percentage points different. And 2%, you might say, 2% is nothing, that's not meaningful. It might be. And how many 18-year-old people are there in the United States? Take 2% of them. 18 plus people. They don't know, registered voters. Take 2% of them. That's how many people it is. That's a big chunk of people, isn't it? So Aaron, I like what you're saying about 10%, and Zach, what your counter saying with 10%. But statistically significantly, that's how you measure it. You slap a margin of error on there, and if there is a difference in the ranges of values, then it is statistically significantly different. I like how you're puzzled over this. This makes me happy. Because here's how it backfires for Gallup. Support for oil exploration in Alaska reached new highs. Well, obviously, more support drilling than don't support it, right? Because it's 49 to 45. But is it 49 to 45?
It's the opposite.
There's no conclusion that can be made from this data. You have to apply that 4% to those numbers, which means that 49 might be as low as 45, and that 45 might be as high as
49.
Which means that's what is called a statistical dead heat. Although 49 itself is higher than 45 itself, you can't claim that 49% of Americans, you can claim that 49% of your sample, but your sample is not all Americans. You have to put the wings on it to admit the fact that there's a difference there. There's clearly a difference here, yes, between favor and oppose. Clearly, even with 4% added on, even with 10% added on. But 4% is what we have to add on. That's a function, Janelle, you asked, that 4% is a function of that sample. The bigger that sample, the smaller that percentage gets. That's the mathematics behind the margin of error. We'll talk about more after class if you want to know the mathematics more precisely. We can talk about it after class. It is a big chunk of 244, which Omar will take and tell you all about in class next term. But these guys right here, too close to call. Statistical dead heat. If that were 49, what would that have to be for us to believe it was actually significantly lower than 49? What would it have to go down to, at least? 41 would be the cusp, wouldn't it? Because 41 plus 4 would be 45, and 49 minus 4 would be 45, and that would be the cusp. If it was below 41 meaningfully, then you'd be like, oh, there's a difference now. Not close enough. This is still a coin flip. This is still a coin flip. Because we don't know. There's fluctuation. This is not the presidential election where we've counted every vote. We have not counted every vote. We've counted 1,021 of them. And we have to admit that by putting error bars on there. Do you guys buy in that? And that is the importance of paying attention to the details of these statistical, this is inference. They are taking this random sample of 1,021 continental United States folks, and trying to tell us that 6 in 10 Americans favor increasing offshore drilling. I have to call bull crap on that. 6 in 10 Americans don't favor increasing drilling. 6 in 10 of their sample do. 6 in 10 plus or minus 4% favor increasing offshore drilling. Go ahead, Sarah.
So if you're talking about continental, that
Yeah.
means Alaska's actually not even involved in this.
Correct. It's only
And it's happening
the
in
lower
Alaska.
48, the contiguous 48. Yeah, I know. That's what I do find that interesting. And it wasn't mentioned in the poll that they were trying. It's almost like Alaskans are Americans for the purposes of this poll, nor are Hawaiians. And if I remember my time in Hawaii, they would prefer it that way, if I remember
Yes,
correctly.
they would.
Yes, they would. Wow.
Yes,
Yeah.
I've actually been accused of not being American because I'm Alaskan.
Really?
Yes. By my mother-in-law.
Well, that credit goes to the territory. I think all kinds of things by my mother-in-law, sorry. That's adorable. You're super American, whatever that means. You're like half Canadian. I don't know what
They're
that
nicer
means.
American.
What's that?
They're nicer American.
That's North Dakota. and Minnesota. Minnesota 8. So, they sound like Alaskans. Conspiracy there. Anyway, so the point of the matter is pay attention to these margins of error. So Janelle, with that sample size, you kind of nailed raw to something there. I love what you said over there, Sean, too, about the percentage of the percentage. I love that. 10% of 40, you turned 25% of people more. And when you extrapolate that out to how many people that actually is, that's a lot of people. But you got to admit that even that has a margin on it. It might not be exactly that 10%. That 10% has a plus or minus as well. So this is the best way to calculate that, is to apply that, wherever it is, here it is, plus or minus, to whatever numbers they're giving you. Now sometimes you get meaningless values. Plus or minus 4% on 3, -1 to 7, -1. Throw the -1, but that doesn't have any meaning. But mathematically, that's how you take care of that uncertainty. Fair? You see how this is inference, this is hypothesizing versus simply reporting. Simply reporting would be these numbers right here. These numbers right here. But then you can't make a claim like 6 in 10 Americans. Well, you shouldn't make that claim anyway. It's not 6 in 10 Americans. 6 in 10 Americans in their sample. If you want to take that out to the population, you got to apply that to it. And then you admitted that you might not even be 100% right. You're only 95% confident in that result. More on that in 244 too. We don't get that right now. The idea is making sure you realize the difference between that and this. Hopefully you do. There you counted everything. With Alaska, you only counted some, and you're trying to make it stand for everything. Go ahead, Kelly, you had a question.
Well, like back on that other thing.
Yeah,
Now, shouldn't you know who's funding the testing
it's Gallup. It's independent.
on this?
This is a Gallup poll, independent sampling.
But
Gallup's
you-
one of the best.
You should always do that.
Oh, God, yeah.
Because who says any of it's true?
Who says it isn't paid for by the oil industry?
That's what I
Exactly.
know.
No, that's a great one. Always check the source of the polling situation. I remember Airborne. Remember Airborne? It's still sold, I think. The effervescent cold cure.
Uh-huh.
It was proven to reduce symptoms of colds within 2 weeks or something like that. Which is exactly the same as sitting around waiting for 2 weeks for your cold to go away, because that's about how long they last anyway. Anyway, so this study was done, and it was one study, never replicated. And it used to be on the bottle, clinically proven to reduce the symptoms of colds. They stopped putting that on their bottle because it was discovered that the people that made Airborne paid for the study. Well, that's a bit of a problem. It's called a conflict of interest. Yes? That's why you like Gallup, you like Quinnipiac, you like Rasmussen. Some people complain that CNN is too liberal, Fox is too conservative. I don't know about that. I mean, depending on how you define liberal and conservative. But Gallup, these folks are generally pretty unbiased as far as their, and if you look at how they collected their data, random digit dial sampling. I mean, it's not the best form of sampling, but it's better than simply mailing letters out. I mean, it's probably one of the best forms of pseudo-random sampling that you can get to. So I agree with what you're saying. You're saying before you even get to the crunching part, make sure your data is legit. Like we said earlier, I'd rather have less good data than more crap.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so Gallup does a pretty good job. Gallup got burned in the Dewey-Truman election about 100 years ago, and they've learned a lot from that. We'll study that in 244 too. All right, now we got our data. We're happy, it's good. You guys working with the lights off? Is it okay with the lights? Yeah?
Yeah.
No good? It seems a little dark back there. Hi, everybody. Yeah. All right, so what I'm going to do here is talk about how to actually put your data in a form that is meaningful to your audience. A few things. a few things. I want to hit a few things today. The rest of them we'll pick up as we go. So here's a bunch of numbers. And I made them up. They're perfect. We'll collect some more meaningful data here in a minute. Here's just a bunch of numbers that a statistician collects. And that's what we call raw data. Raw data, raw data. And that's fantastic. It's my favorite kind. I love having raw data because I love being able to see the slight and individual and perfect nuances in the data. The problem with raw data is it's messy. Like if I was to ask you guys, how are your employees doing as far as making what they're making each week? What would you say? If you had to sum it up in like one number or two numbers, what would you say?
Well,
20.
That's a good statement. 20! 20! Good, I like that. Why is it hard to summarize? Go ahead, Sarah. What are you going to say?